launching the podcast on the show, but we got some great guests. The reason I got these hats out here is we're mourning that we're missing opening day with our Dodgers. But that said, we got a great lineup of guests today. First, I want to let you know, flipping all the channels, making it all happen is the best, Christine, my wife. Now, we're keeping 6 feet of distance. Even though we're in the old pod, we're doing what we can.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, if you want to hit me up, I'm Sports Stories DL on Twitter. So please do that. And keep in mind, sportsstoriespodcast.com is where all our social media and where you can get our newly released shows, as well as all our archives, all kinds of fun stuff. I think right now we ought to bring in the producer. We have to keep her in Venice because that's where she lives. Let's bring in one of our producers, Marley Rice.
Hi, everyone.
Slick. How do you like the new look, Marley?
I like it. It looks just like the old look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, how you flipped in on a. That was exciting.
I love it. It was very exciting. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Welcome to another Facebook Live. A different setup. This is my backyard, everyone.
So you're out in the Venice office, huh?
I am in the Venice office.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting a lot of stuff done still producing the show, still getting shows out to you every Thursday, guys.
Best part of this, Marley, is when we need to, we can just get rid of you.
Exactly. Like right now. But before then, let's cheers to another Facebook.
Actually, let's bring in our sponsor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Where's our sponsor? Carlos.
How you doing, guys?
What's happening, buddy? So we want to announce our sponsorship. You've already been sponsoring the podcast, but now you've moved into the Facebook area. So thank you for sponsoring this show. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, thank you, Danny, for giving me the opportunity to sponsor your show, as I'm a big fan of your podcast. So when you told me you had a Facebook Live, I said, I want to get in this. You always bring a lot of great content, and I'm always excited to hear what new sports stories and what angles you take. So I wanted to be a part of this.
You read that well. I wrote that for you, didn't I?
You did. I have it right here.
I think I wrote it.
Nice, buddy. Well, first, I like where you are. Are you at the restaurant right now?
I am at the restaurant. It would have been packed today, but because of the situation, I am just here by myself, which I get to enjoy on a Friday night, which I don't know what the last time I got to enjoy a Friday night by myself was.
Your restaurant's the best because they got so much memorabilia there. It might be the most memorabilia of any place from the movie Casablanca.
I believe it is, because we've been here for 40 years, and we've been getting donations, purchased some stuff, but a lot of it has been from people either who worked at Warner Brothers, were part of the movie, and as the time passed on, they didn't know what to do with it, and they didn't just want it, they wanted somebody who'd be a keepsake of some of the best memorabilia, so we ended up getting a chip from the original chip from the movie, because there was a casino scene, so there's an original chip, there's an original jacket of Humphrey Bogart here, so there's a lot of memorabilia here that is original and from either somebody who used to work on the set at Warner Brothers or worked on the actual movie.
It is. It's so much fun. It's such a great ambiance there. Hey, Carlos, tell us, there's a special that goes with being a member, an audience member of SSDL. And if they call you, what happens?
Sure. So right now, we're offering because we're not open. We're offering the second best thing is just picking up food from the restaurant. So we're doing a couple of packages. We're doing a taco bar, and we're doing a fajita bar, and they all. If you mention Sports Story with Danny Lennon, I will throw in a pitcher of margarita with it. So you can just So there's a lot of places they're offering the margarita, but if you mention Sports Story, we will actually give it to you for free.
That's brilliant.
Wow.
Let's cheers to that. What do you say?
Cheers to our margaritas that were delivered to us.
Right on, buddy. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Okay. With that, we get to let Marley go. See ya, Marley.
Bye, everyone.
Marley.
Carlos, I understand your two girls have been keeping busy, even though they're out of school, and they're producing little films here and there.
They are. They didn't know what to do. They've already played outside. I think they've gotten in my hair enough. And yesterday they decided to produce a film, and they just showed it to me. So the older sister directed it, the younger one acted it, and this is what you have when you have so much time and you let just creativity go in. So this is what they created.
So give me their names, and so make sure they get a little credit, and then we're going to let you go as we go to this movie before we go to our first guest, Mike Boehle.
Perfect, no problem. So the director is my oldest. She's Belen, and she is 12, and the youngest one is 9, and she's the one that's in the film.
Upside of being at home and having a little bit disposable time.
Yeah, so I get to enjoy them a lot more. So I've been doing that. So I've gotten to joke around, spend some time. So I guess that's the great thing about being at home with my family is I get to spend more time with them.
Love it. All right, let's take a look. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks, Odd.
Oops.
Other one.
I lost her. I had her a second ago. Technical difficulties.
Okay, tech difficulties. We're almost there.
I just barely started. I'm Margarita.
Don't look for the beer roll. Go by many names. Sometimes Alexandra and sometimes Agent Zero. Kobe was 8, then 24. I was 16, cause that's the number in between. Check me, just killed you with my queen. Call me fish or call me kiss, bruh. 我只学中文比你好 Just learn Chinese, got a little richer.
Ooh, it just got real. The cipher just got real.
So good. Hey, listen, people, if anybody wants to submit a movie, you can do so. It's info@sportstoriespodcast.com. If you send it to us during the week and it's good enough, we'll roll it on the Friday night and you'll get that slot. I think that was a lot of fun. One of the things we got to keep doing is exercising. It's really difficult this time, but if you don't, that's when things really start to settle down. One of my recent guests was Bert Mandelbaum, and he talked at length about how important it is to exercise. So one of the things I've noticed while I was out walking the blocks is people are starting to use the sidewalk to send the messages. So we got a few of those from the streets of the walks. All right. Hey, look, if you, the same thing, if you notice that while you're out walking around, go ahead, take the picture, send it in to us, and we'll try to move the positivity forward. Speaking of Bert Mandelbaum, he's the guest right now on Sports Stories. He's the United States Olympic Committee and FIFA medical advisor. Bert is a terrific guy. I've known him for a long time, but it took a lot of time, to sit with us, and we were able to make it into a 3-part episode. So he speaks directly to what we're dealing with medically, what the Olympics and the decisions they made. And then he goes through his life, which is really inspirational. He's got a great message in life. So hoping that you get an opportunity. The first one we released was the most downloaded episode we've had yet. And number 2's out now. Number 3 will be out next week. So that's Bert Mandelbaum, medical advisor to the United States Olympic Committee. All right. Fortunate enough to have a few guests tonight. One of which is dealing with the coronavirus and the cancellation of sports in his own ways. I've certainly known him for a long time because he's my cousin. More importantly, well, no, less importantly, but nearly as important, is he's one of the greatest coaches ever in the southern section of the CIF with 6 section titles and 4 state titles to his credit. 1 national title, I think, MB, if I'm not mistaken. 2 national titles? Goodness.
2,
Mike Boehle, welcome, baby.
Hi, you guys. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Mike, I kind of forgot during your introduction to let everybody know that you are also a champion on the AVP Tour. But more importantly, and this is more importantly, you won 2 Venice Backyard Championship titles, right?
Yeah. It took me a long time to do that, but It was definitely felt very good to be part of that small few people that were able to do that for the period of time of what I think it was about a 9-year run that we had. So I was very happy that I was able to get my name on the net there.
Dang right. Now, Mike just wanted you to know right here is your 2009 National Championship ring. And then today,
Yes.
I'm sporting the backup one, which is 2010 when you went back to back. And those are around the garage because my son was on your teams.
Garage. Interesting.
Well,
okay.
Studio.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, those were special times, and Vaughn was able to be part of a pretty special group of people and kids, and we were real fortunate enough to go back to back with that. And one of those was a national championship that we was on, and the game that stands out the most to me during that season was the Newport Harbor one.
Oh, it's unreal.
Can't believe, being down 14-10 in the fifth set,
right,
and coming back 16-14, and your son was crucial in that comeback. So that's still in my favorite all-time memories of coaching for sure.
And you weren't offended that I was yelling instructions from the stands, were you?
Not at all. In fact, I encourage all my parents to talk to their kids
right,
playing,
because that does help. That does help.
It helps a lot. It really helps. Absolutely.
Mike, what you do is you build such a culture and a family atmosphere when you're coaching your teams, and this has got to be tough not being able to take to the practice or the competition courts right now.
Yeah, Denny, it was interesting. It happened so fast, and we saw this thing kind of transitioning early on, and a lot of people didn't take it very seriously, including myself. It was just another virus that was kind of going through, and didn't know enough about it. And I remember getting prepared for Corona Del Mar on Wednesday afternoon on March 12th, and getting a call from my athletic director, basically having an emergency meeting with the athletic director stating that we were going to host the game, but there were not going to be any spectators. So I was like, okay. So I had a meeting with my players at noon scheduled, and within an hour, I got another phone call from my AD basically saying, we're closing shop. And I had to give that message to the guys, and it was probably one of the hardest things I had to do because this group is very special this year. They very talented group of guys, 19, 20 guys, and to bring them into a room and try to explain to them what's going on, it was hard because I didn't really know either. And
did you?
Part of me wanted to say, and the other part was like, I've got to do my civic duty and be careful with this thing. So I got both sides. It was real frustrating.
At the time, was it like week to week, or was it like, no, we're done for a month? What was your announcement to your team?
Well, it was March 28th was the first date, and that was my big thing. And I was hoping that we could do increments. Let's see where we are in 2 weeks. Let's see where we are in 2 weeks. And it was shot down, and we've now been I think April 20th now is our deadline. We've been extended. So Loyola shut down until April 20th, which is a little earlier than most schools, because most schools, LA Unified, I think Manhattan Beach School District, they're going May 1st, May 10th, I believe. So we're going to see at April 20th. There's still some hope for me. We can talk about that. I'm hoping that CIF is going to come to some type of a decision. They just made an announcement that they're closing their offices for an extended period, but April 3rd is when they meet with the state. And, I'm just hoping that, like I said before, I'm hoping that increments is what we want to look at. They haven't shut anything down yet, but I'm hoping that we might be able to save a 2 to 3 week season for us so that these kids get a chance to show how good they really are. And it's not just my program, it's high school sports.
It really is. What kind of contact have you had with your team? How are you, trying to hold things together, at least via where everybody has to be in their own houses and stuff?
So it's very interesting. I'm not the most tech guy. So Loyola was gracious enough to set up a Zoom account for our teachers to give to the students. And so what happened, I got in touch with my guys through the group me text, and I said, listen, I'd like to see you guys. I'd like to talk to you, and I'd like to just get out there and give you an update. And so just last Wednesday, we had a group chat with our coaches, our student managers, and every single one of our players on a screen where I got to communicate with them and see them, and just to see them, and was so special. And it was good for both sides because I hadn't seen them in a week or two, and it was pretty cool. So I got text back saying, Coach, we really needed this. and let's do this once a week. And so we're going to schedule this for once a week, and I'm looking forward to it. It was really neat.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about just, we talked about everything.
It's really interesting because my wife Christine is a teacher, and just watching her connect with her classroom every day, and you're just seeing this. One of the things Dr. Mandelbaum said is through adversity is the engine of unimagined possibilities. And when he said that, I was thinking, like, this is as adverse as any situation as we've had to deal with, and it's interesting watching both my wife or somebody like you having to now think outside of what you ever knew in order to try to keep some semblance of a team or a classroom or whatever. And I think people are probably interested, just like kind of dropping in and getting a look at what you have to do to keep that together. Yeah,
and I think it's important to keep the faith. Like there's 50%, 60% of me that says we're going to continue the season, and they're going to do it because this is what these kids need. They need this. This is a horrible time, and they've been through a horrible time. And athletics, as you know, is an important part of life. And so I really think that, I'm hoping, and if I have my say, and I've got my time with one of the CIF commissioners, which I'm on the board there, I'm hoping that I'll be able to at least give them my opinion of what I think should happen and how we'd like to do it in a particular time frame, and just give the chance to these kids to get out and do something. And again, I talk about all sports. It's not just the volleyball. Right. It's baseball. It's all the spring sports. In particular to volleyball, though, Mike, would this, if the scenario was, you only have a couple of weeks and we're just going to do an extended, in effect, playoffs tournament to determine a CIF champion, would you be okay with that kind of scenario? I would, only if the teams that were supposed to. So I just had a conversation with one of the coaches in Orange County, basically saying that they've just got extended to May 10th. Everything's got to align, because right. If you don't get the teams that you need in these divisions or in these playoffs, it's all in or all out. And so I'm hoping that if things start to slow down here a little bit, we're going to be able to get those top 8 teams, 6 teams, to create some type of a bracket for us to show that we need to play. But I wouldn't want to just go in there knowing that Loyola's there, but schools like Maricosta, CDM, Huntington Beach, those schools aren't participating because they're still not in session. It's got to be an all in or all out. And I think that's what we're all waiting on, is just to see, hey, if this virus thing starts to slow down and they start to figure out how to manage it, maybe CIF will give us some reprieve and go, all right, here we go, let's do it. I like you brought up Maricosta, and I think one of the great parts of the whole sports season every year, any season, whether it's a football rivalry, basketball rivalry, is your boys volleyball rivalry against Maricosta that draws thousands of fans, and you have to get a bigger venue than either of you can hold at your own schools. And that rivalry goes back a number of years, and it's really great. Can you speak to that a little bit? Yeah, it's one of the best rivalries. I've had alums from both sides call it Tobacco Row, the North Carolina Duke matchup. But your kids aren't allowed to. As far as boys volleyball goes, I don't think it gets any better than the rivalry that Maricosta and Loyola has. We both have produced top players, and we started this rivalry back in 1973, I think, or 74. Wow. When volleyball first became a CIF sanctioned sport. I got into it in the late 90s all the way through the 2000s, and it's there's nothing like it. We were able to branch out and get Loyola Marymount University. In fact, this year was going to be the first time in 3.5 years that we were able to play at Loyola, because it hasn't been able to work out. So we were so excited, and we put it out early for both teams, and both alums got the message early. And to shut it down, because it's supposed to be played April 3rd. Actually, next week is our time frame for that, and it's not going to happen, unfortunately. So, but it is an unbelievable community event, and the crowds that come up, it's good. It's great volleyball too. Before everything came down, everybody was down. This came out in the Daily Breeze, the paper of note in the South Bay, Mike, and it talks about how in effect they're claiming that Maricosta was going to win the championship, and they barely even mentioned Loyola in there. I found that interesting. Daily Breeze, yeah, South Bay paper, mm-hmm. Yeah. And we have the 80-70% of our team that's all from the South Bay. I don't get it. It's tough to find the love all over the place, Denny. I can tell you that we know who we are, and I'm proud of where I am and what we do and how we do it. And no one's gonna.
It's so good. That's such a good game. Now, there's something else that's interesting about you. Is your sons, you and your wife Lisa, your daughter now is a standout volleyball player at Loyola Marymount. So let's not overlook that. But you had 3 boys that all went Division I and all played at UC Santa Barbara, and that's just crazy time. That all way, and then your girl now is at Loyola Marymount. So 4-4 MB, way to go. But we're going to talk about international sports coming up in the next segment. And your boy was over in France, Hayden, playing for a club team there. So could you explain a little bit about that? Because I understand he had a tough time getting out of there.
Sure. First, let me go back to your statement about my 3 boys and my daughter being able to play at the next level. That's something that's unheard of. And people ask me all the time, you must have forced them. And it's like, yeah, I forced them. Every day they woke up, I had them outside pounding a ball. Yeah. I'm so lucky. Lisa and I are so blessed that we were able to have these kids do what they wanted to do and have a love for the sport that I truly loved. And Denny, but just honored and blessed that they were able to do this at a pretty high level. And so, yeah, it's fantastic. And now to watch my daughter do it, it's even better. So just so excited and so proud of all of them.
So Mike, they must have got their athletic ability from their mom.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Yeah, no one knows that. And Lisa likes to stay, behind the scenes, but holy cow, she's believe me though, without her, I couldn't do what I do.
Of course.
And I must thank her publicly because she does a great job. But yeah, it was a scary time because Hayden was in France and they had just, we communicate via text, and he had just gotten word that his league was canceling or postponing their season. And, at the time, again, Denny, as I mentioned earlier, it was, we were kind of in the unknown stages of this virus. And so I didn't know how strong it was going to get. And then all of a sudden it started to creep up. And then the news the night before on a Friday night, I'll never forget, Lisa and I were watching the news, and it was showing the airports and how crazy the airports were. And it was a 5 to 4 hour, stay in customs. And I said, I'm getting them home, and he reached back and said, Dad, USA Volleyball is sending out information, basically asking the guys to come back home between now and Monday. And if they can't get out Monday, then they're going to have to be there for the duration of 45 days. And
how scary.
I couldn't fathom that. It was just one of those things. And France had not even been hit that hard. We were out there in January, late January, and there were some rumblings about the virus, but it wasn't anything big. So I quickly got on the computer, booked him a flight, and, thankfully he got home on Sunday. It was a real quick thing. He packed up, and we texted him while he was in the air and basically said, hey, Hayden, be careful, because when you land, it's a 13-hour flight, but we don't want you to get too frustrated. You're going to have another 5 hours in the airport. And, just be careful. So he landed, he texted and said, CDC's coming on the plane. They're going to give us masks. And I said, okay, bud, again, be careful, because, you're going to have a long wait. Just call me when you're ready to come out of customs. And within 10 minutes, which was really weird, I got a phone call from him. He goes, I'm on the curb. And I went, what? LA was just a complete ghost town. So it didn't affect LAX like it did New York and Chicago. And that was my frustration, was that the media was putting out this message and putting the fear, as parents, and even as just normal people that would be watching the news, about how these airports are out of control. And it wasn't. Now, knock on wood, right? Like, knock on wood, it didn't happen to him. And man, it's really horrible what was happening on the East Coast. But, he was lucky enough to get home. And that was the bottom line, Denny. I filmed myself driving into LAX with zero traffic and pulling up. And you can hear myself talking about, okay, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Oh, there he is. And he's waiting there with his mask on. And it was so excited to get him home on our country and get him home. So he had to be a 2-week quarantine. It's coming up this Sunday, actually. So he's home, he's healthy, and we're a full house right now. I think I lost your. Denny, I'm sorry, but I lost your audio.
Checking in. Am I back, Mike?
There you go. You're back.
There's somebody else who does a lot of international travel. He's my international sports liaison to Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. And that's Gino Grajeda. I'm going to bring him in, put us in a try box.
Okay.
Here we go. There he is. Hi, Gino.
Oh, how are you guys?
Hi, Gino.
Gino, we'll introduce you formally in a second, but while Mike's still here with us, I wanted you to comment a little bit. You do a fair amount of traveling, and I think you were just coming back from one of the hot spots when this all broke out.
I was in Europe when this was going on. We were actually meeting on this very topic, and both in Brussels and in Belgrade, and I actually had to transfer through Paris, which was a little crazy. But coming back to LAX, I experienced the same thing. I was coming in through a ghost town. There was nobody there. It was unusual, almost surreal. But I can see there was a little bit of panic at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris going through there.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I'm wondering if we can count on you to come back as often as you can, because I think people will be really interested to hear how things are going with your with your team, and especially if we get back up and playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about this. I think this is great. I think you're doing a great job, Denny, in promoting Sports Stories with Denny Lennon, and I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I'm on it on Thursdays. So I'm excited, and I'm hoping that we can continue this, and I'm more than happy to come back on, whenever you need it, especially during this time.
I love it. And this I don't get to do often to people, but I could just like wipe you out, and then you go. Christine just goes, whoop. I love it. Mike Boehle, appreciate him coming. Oh, Gino, we'll do the same to you at the end, just so you know, Gino.
Got it.
So, Gino, you and I have known each other for a particularly long time, maybe over 26 years or something, but your position is with the, one of your many positions is with the ISF. Can you explain a little bit about what the ISF is and how it's in line with the International Olympic Committee, which oversees the Olympics? Gino.
The ISF is the International School Sport Federation. We are an international group of over 120 countries that promotes basically scholastic sports throughout the world, and we are recognized by the International Olympic Committee as the governing body for sports, for these type of sports in the world.
Interestingly enough, the debate was going on when you were meeting in, I think you said Brussels and somewhere else, but at the same time, the IOC was basically going, we're good to go. Business as usual. We're going to go ahead with these Olympic Games, which I don't think went over particularly well with the whole world. When I think there was a little more prudent approach with your organization.
Our structure is a little different than theirs. We deal with countries that are members of our organization.
I'm getting frozen.
That's his internet.
And we have one most come in China. And that's the event that's in October that's in trouble. We were meeting in Brussels in early February and in Belgrade in late February, early March about this particular event as if it's going to happen, not knowing that it was going to be a worldwide pandemic. It was not just isolated to China and Asia. So our meetings back then were really focused on how can we pull this event off. This, along with the International Children's Games, I'm also part of, has come. I'm trying to figure this out. What the next steps are. ISF has since canceled all of the March, April, May, and early June events, which we have world championships in single sport throughout the world, from India to Europe to North America to everywhere. So now we're down to scheduling if we're going to have the World High School Games, the Gymnasiad, in October in Xinjiang, China. That's our next tackle.
And how close is that to where the original hotspot was?
Xinjiang is in southern China. Wuhan is more central. I think on my original flight coming through, when I was in Beijing, and I was there in November, and then doing a site visit in Xinjiang in late November before this thing broke out. So China's a pretty big country, so we were more in the tropical part, but it wasn't. It's pretty far apart.
One of the interesting things about the Olympics is they have canceled and said it'll be in 2021. They haven't particularly designated a time of year. And I think you and I were having a conversation about what time of year may or may not work best, but there's so many complicating factors.
A lot of the factors when you move an event like the Olympic Games is you're dealing with 33 international federations of sport. And each sport has their own world championships, continental championships, national championships that they have to deal with. So moving this puzzle to 2021 is going to be a challenge for the IOC. I think there's been talk about springtime, which would be great weather for Tokyo. Tokyo during the summertime, as you know, is very hot and humid, which is one of the reasons why they moved the marathon out of Tokyo to another city. But the springtime, although the weather would be great, it might conflict with NBA or March Madness or a lot of other championships going on right now. I think the initial plan is to try to put it around the same time frame. That's what the latest I heard, but they got to deal with, there is the swimming championships, the world championships, ironically in Fukuoka, Japan on July 16th, and the international track and field championships scheduled for Eugene, Oregon, second week of August. So they would have to get cooperation from those two events to move their events to another year, another date, so that can fit in there. Ideally, for the networks and the broadcasters, they like to keep it around the same time frame, July and August. But that's wait to be seen. I think 3 weeks is the latest I've heard about when that's going to come to hold.
There's been an interesting dynamic over the years about the International Olympic Committee. Back when the Olympic Games were, not making money and not doing well, there wasn't a big concern about the television contract. But then when Peter Ueberroth and his committee saved it in the '84 Olympic Games, the United States got a big part of the pie of that television revenue. And then there was some resentment around the world, and so they had a less of a voice on the IOC. But as we stand here today, I think Bach and de France are in prominent positions on the IOC board. So considering so much of what the Olympic Games are going to step on top of are American sports like the NBA, March Madness, perhaps NFL, what is the United States' role on that IOC board these days?
The United States plays a big part in the broadcast of the games and the biggest part of the licensing fees that are paid by the U.S. in order to put these games on. All the other countries use the U.S. feed and use their own broadcast and so forth to get the games broadcast. Right. If you look at the time frame, so it is a very important piece of the puzzle to keep it within the frame, so not to interfere with other U.S. sports, obviously. For example, the last time the games were held in Tokyo in '64, it was held in October when the broadcast rights weren't as particular. So I think they're looking at this July-August timeframe when it fits into the broadcast schedule to make it work. For example, the games in Paris in 2024 are scheduled to start the first week of August. And I know they didn't want to go into the fall. Obviously, NFL will be experienced, but also the 2022 Winter Olympic Games start in February 2022 in Beijing, almost 6 months after the Summer Games. So you have two completely different Olympic Games trying to back into each other at the same time.
Yeah, that's such a complicated. So hopefully you'll continue to come on the show and educate us about this because you have a unique position within it. But then coming back domestically, you and I, we're big on junior beach volleyball, and our amateur athletic union, which is a premier beach volleyball tour for the country. We're in our district, as well as the rest of the country, we're not operating in April or May. And you and I know we got a big project that comes in July with our two large events, the national championships and the Junior Olympic Games for the AAU. And me and you got to figure out, along with Christine and Marley, Tyler, and the rest of our crew, about how these qualifiers are going to happen, who's going to come out to Los Angeles, if even we're playing in July. And that's a really interesting dilemma we face. And you had to face it right now with your high school beach volleyball.
Our high school beach volleyball season is currently on hold. We stopped in the middle of our season, so we're trying to hopefully finish up the season, maybe May, early June. Looks like we may have to cancel the state championship portion of that. But as far as our local beach volleyball events, we're canceled through March and April. May still a possibility. But we have huge events scheduled for the summer. Not only our beach volleyball championship in Hermosa Beach, but of course are also massive indoor national championships in Orlando, Florida at the end of June, which leads into our summer national championships, West Coast JO Games, and of course the Junior Olympic Games in Virginia Beach for one of our divisions. And every one of these tournaments is on a hold right now. Hopefully we can get this in. It's a wait and see game right now.
You hold multiple positions at multiple organizations. How do you like your new designation as International Sports Liaison for Sports Stories with Denny Lennon? How's that?
Well, I'm in international meetings all the time. So I'm in contact with my colleagues around the world who are sports ministers, some ministers of education, some presidents of technical sports commissions. we're almost in a contact in the social media aspect of what's going on in their country and their world from all 5 continents. So it's an amazing part of the piece to be connected so closely with the rest of the world, in addition to what you and I are doing in the United States. So it's a great opportunity to work with the ISF. Also, I'm involved with the Committee of the International Children Games. That is still scheduled to be held in Hungary this year in early July. And both organizations are part of the IOC. And the AAU's world and all that is the United States representative organization into these organizations.
I'll tell you what, at any of those meetings that you go to, if you run into any roadblocks, now that you're our international sports liaison, you just drop my name, no problem. That's courtesy of the show, Gino.
We'll have to have the Denny Lennon Sports Podcast cover some of the international meetings, as long as you can broadcast in about 7 languages.
I can give it a shot. I got a friend, his name's Ray. He does a lot of accents. Right now, though, Gino, I know you and I, outside of running sports, we like to attend them, especially we go to Dodger games. And something you and I normally would go to would be opening day. We're not going to get to do that this year, but our baseball experts coming on, I like to call them our baseball aficionado, if not our baseball advocate, if not our baseball associate. That sounds better, Jake. Sounds like you're part of some syndicate. Big game, Jake Downey. Hey, Jake.
Denny, how are you? Gino, how are you?
Hi, Jake.
So, Jake, you have a group that convenes at your house every opening day and makes a walk to Dodger Stadium. So tell us a little bit about that, and too bad we're missing out.
Yeah, it goes all the way back to 2018 and the epic 7-hour World Series game that went 18 innings with the Dodgers and the Red Sox, and Max Muncy hit the walk-off at like 12:30 in the morning. And I had always wanted to walk to a Dodger opening day, thinking that was like the only time of year it wasn't going to be sizzling hot. And the year before, in 2017, when they made the World Series, I said, I got to walk the first game of the World Series. But it was 103 degrees at 5 in the afternoon. So,
yes.
My buddy Dan said, why don't you hop in my Tesla and I'll give you a ride to the ballpark? And there went my walk to the park. But then in 2018, game 3 against the Red Sox, it was only about 80 degrees. I said, I can do this. And my buddies John and Lionel met me about halfway through the walk in Hollywood. And we walked down Hollywood Boulevard to Sunset to Vin Scully, and we were there.
You brought up, Jake, I'm sorry, you brought up Hollywood. That reminds me, I still got Gino on this, and it reminded me how much fun I have just wiping people out of there. So from Hollywood, thank you, Gino, for being on the show, and we hope to keep you around each week, giving us international sports information. Jake, crazy times, huh?
Yeah, where's my baseball, Denny?
Right.
I miss baseball. I like watching replays of stuff, but it's not the same as watching games. There's a certain rhythm to the day that you get home at the end of the day and you get to watch a ball game. And, if it's not baseball season where you have a game every day, there's always something else. NBA, NHL, NC2A basketball. There's always something to watch. And I'll hold if you want to answer that.
Jake, tell me a little bit about the Global Baseball League.
Well, the Global Baseball League is the brainchild of a fellow that I actually went to San Diego State with named Nico Riesco. Nico played briefly in the big leagues. He and I found each other and have partnered to try to create the first domestic winter league.
Okay.
The answer to your next question is I have no idea if we'll be able to pull it off this winter with Major League Baseball being pushed further into November and December. We were operating on the traditional time frames of the World Series ending near Halloween. But if it heads into November and December and isn't settled till Christmas, which I can't even believe we're talking about that, then I'm not sure how we're going to make global baseball work. But ultimately, we want to offer the players a chance to have a domestic winter alternative as opposed to going south of the border. And we'd like to give fans in some Southwest city a chance to see baseball. And we're also working on the broadcast piece. So it's all something that we are trying to make happen, and we've been at it for a couple of years.
Well, Jake, I know you have, but we may be looking at winter baseball with Major League Baseball this year. In fact, as I hold this up, this was an article in the LA Times, and Scott Boras had commented or made a proposal to MLB that the season could still come off as a 162-game season, and that in effect, I believe all of December would be the playoffs, and most of them would be in effect centralized in warm weather sites or something along these lines.
Yeah, I saw that story too. Game 7 of the World Series would be December 26th. A little hard to believe that we'd be playing baseball that deep into the year, especially going up against football. I don't know how sacred the 162-game season is to really play with foul weather. I guess Boris's suggestion is that we play in the 8 domed stadiums that you can play in. Remember that the Rangers are moving into an indoor stadium this year, so you have one in Dallas and Houston. And I'm sure you can tick off the others. But regardless, it would be 8 dome stadiums and then the 3 stadiums in Southern California, San Diego, Anaheim, LA.
Right.
I suppose it's logistically feasible.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it also puts the cold weather teams at a disadvantage because they wouldn't be playing at home. But like they said about playing the Super Bowl after 9/11 and trying to do it on 1 week's notice instead of 2 after the conference title games, you can do anything once. I don't know if we're going to get into this habit as a new normal, but people of goodwill can come together and make something happen as a special event. Kind of like playing the World Cup in the middle of the Persian Gulf.
Right.
Doing that in November instead of June because you can't do it in June when it's 148 degrees.
Let me ask you this, Jake. What do you think about on the Major League Baseball side? Scott Boras is a significant agent of several players, and they'll make full salary on a 162-game season, and he'll make full commission on said contracts. Is there anything like that needs to be kicked around so we know exactly where he's coming from?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, a lot of people have said a lot of stuff about Boras and questioned his motives, and the profit motive, it can't be dismissed. I mean, you and I like to make money. Everybody likes to make money. I don't know if that's why he's pushing this project up the hill. He's had this idea of having a neutral site World Series, or at least the first 2 games of the World Series in a neutral site, as kind of a end of the year destination that you can plan on, similar to the Super Bowl, which is the greatest exhibit of it. The NBA, to a lesser degree, has it with the All-Star game.
Right.
You haven't seen this with the Major League Baseball All-Star game, although it's right there in the middle of the summer, and you could have it as a destination where business gets done. I like the idea of having a destination World Series. The first 2 games of a World Series, neutral site.
Yeah.
You play them there, and then you figure out games 3 through 7 based on who the teams are and who has the better record. I've heard dumber ideas, or let me put it more affirmatively. I like the idea. I mean, who doesn't like the idea if you're a baseball fan of knowing that you could go to Tampa on October 23rd for that weekend and be there for 2 games of the World Series, regardless of who's in it? I mean, it does make it a destination. It makes it something you can plan around, and it just adds luster to an event that sometimes is indoors, sometimes is outdoors, sometimes cold weather, sometimes warm weather. You don't know from year to year where it's going to be or who's going to be in it.
The other element to that, too, is the convening of all of the people that make baseball work. So every year I attend the Final Four of NCAA women's volleyball, and it's not just those 4 teams, it's the whole sport of volleyball that comes. There's a convention, you have the convention hall, meeting space, and the whole thing, so that you're sharing ideas and making legislation and moving the sport forward. And baseball doesn't have anything like that. And it's not a bad idea.
You know what they have that it's not tied around a competition of any kind, is the winter meetings. So they do get there to make trades and to conduct business league-wide. And certainly, as you and I are doing right here on the computer, so much work is done within the sports leagues
Yeah.
online and in electronic communications. So we're even talking about having the NFL draft online. So ultimately, the NFL draft is about evaluating with your own eyes college talent. But this year, again, you can do anything once. We can make this happen online.
Well, big game. I hope we get our Dodgers back soon enough. And but in the meantime, I keep getting an opportunity to just swipe you away. So I want to say thank you for coming on, Jake. Oh, I like the fast trigger. That's fun. All right. Hopefully, I'm not Jake Downey. We should say to everybody, hopefully you enjoyed our new revamped look. We're going to keep this going. I hope everybody's staying safe, doing the right things. We're going to beat this just like we beat everything else. All right. From Box Cobbler Entertainment, we always leave you with Ray Castro, right? Box Cobbler Entertainment, Ray Castro, the entertainment liaison to SSDL. And this is a little bit of a tribute to...
You got to know when to fold 'em, know when to hold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. See you next week.